The Department of Interior.
The Department of the Interior.
Department of the Interior.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask for the audience because I know. It's been called the Department of Everything Else. What exactly is the Department of the Interior?
At the Department of the Interior, we manage millions and millions of acres of all of our public lands under the National Park Service, the Wildlife Refuges, the Bureau of Land Management. We protect and preserve our nation's cultural heritage, and we uphold the trust and treaty obligations of our country's 574 federally recognized Indian tribes.
Yeah. What do you do at your job? Let's talk about that. You are 35th generation Laguna Pueblo from New Mexico.
Yes.
35th generation.
Yes.
Are you... Okay, but are you sure? I mean, that is... I asked my mom to get a picture of her grandfather, and she left the room, and I didn't see her for 3 days. How do you know 35 generations?
So my ancestors from Chaco Canyon, it's now Chaco Culture National Historical Park, migrated from that area and from other areas too, Bears Ears, Mesa Verde, all over the Southwest to what is now New Mexico in like 1280.
Wow.
So one time I just, for the heck of it, took out my calculator and searched how many years in a generation, and then I calculated it out, and it came out to 35.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the duties that you've taken on as secretary is trying to right some historical wrongs, many of which have been done under the guise of the Department of the Interior. Tell me about that journey. What has that been like?
Yes. The department that I now lead once had the job of working to assimilate Indians.
Yeah.
Moving Native Americans out of their communities, away from their families, to assimilate them into mainstream society. And one of the ways they did that was to essentially steal children from their mothers, fathers, families, communities, and ship them off, sometimes thousands of miles away from their homes, to attend Indian boarding schools. And so when I got to the department, we thought about what can we do to make a difference in the future of our Native communities across the country. One of the ways was to be honest about our country's history.
Right.
It's a history that not a lot of people, not a lot of Americans realize, right? When they think of boarding school, they think about, sending their kids to a really nice East Coast, boarding school. This was a place where they cut their hair, burned their clothes.
They were punished for speaking in their native language.
Speaking their native languages, and they couldn't practice their cultures or traditions. And they were forced to eat food that they weren't used to, right? Yeah. Traditional food it's important, right? It's depending on where you are geographically in the United States. And so we wanted to bring attention to that.
Yeah.
We wrote 2 reports. Our team researched, they read 103 million pages of documents to put these reports together.
Wow.
And then we set out across the country and did what we called the Road to Healing. And we heard directly from descendants and actual survivors of the boarding school, the Indian boarding schools. And that's going to be an oral history at some point. We're working on that now.
It's the type of history that I'm embarrassed I don't know more about. So then I'm afraid to ask about it. And then this cycle happens and continues. And what does atonement look like?
Yeah, so don't be afraid to ask.
Okay.
Because that's how you learn, right?
I love that, and I just did it on TV, and now I feel like a badass.
So one of the ways, for me, it's healing, right?
Yeah.
We have this generational trauma, and you can look that up and get the definition for it. Generational trauma. It's handed down through the generations. You kind of are affected by what happened to your great-grandparents at some of these schools. And it's first acknowledging what happened.
Yeah.
And that was an acknowledgement by President Biden. He made a formal acknowledgement and apology in Arizona on Indian land and apologized for these atrocities that happened to the children way back then. And but it's also ensuring that people don't ever forget. You learn the history, you don't forget it. And so that's what we're doing with our oral history project, making sure that folks have the opportunity to hear directly from those survivors and know what it was like.
We as people are so afraid to apologize in every capacity, but it can be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you should, we should be humble in the way we lead our lives. And when you're wrong, you should apologize, of course.
Someone described you, maybe it was on your team, but I read it somewhere, that you never fight, but you always win. And I was like, that's some Jedi mind shit right there. What is your philosophy in handling people or difficult situations or confrontations?
Right. Well, I think that came from when I ran my congressional campaign. And so it's yes, tell people what you're about, right? Tell people what they're voting for, not what they're voting against. So it's caring about people. It's showing them what you want to do for them. That's all on the campaign side.
Okay.
On this side of the table, working as a federal employee, it's being vulnerable. It's really appreciating. It's admitting that you're not the end-all be-all. I lead the Department of the Interior, but I have 65,000 federal employees, public servants, every day come to work ready to dedicate their careers to the American people. And so I give them the credit as much as I can.
Man, and it's beautiful to hear that. Also, I listened to that, and there's a tragic thought of the new administration and what's coming. And I feel like it'll be a different philosophy. How do you handle a new administration coming, and one that appears on the exterior to be significantly different?
Sure. Well, of course, we are responsible, and we are moving forward with the transition, right?
I knew you were going to say that.
It's helping. the President Biden wants a transition that is calm and collected and all of that. So we're going to do our best to make sure that whoever comes into the Department of the Interior knows what we're working on. We can tell them what's meant a lot to us and how we've managed the department. But don't forget, will still be 65,000 career staff there who don't leave when I leave.
Right.
And they will continue to do the really wonderful work that they have been doing for decades and decades.
Let's talk about... You recently gave President Biden a parting gift at the Tribal Nations Summit.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. What was it?
Yes, well, it's, for centuries, Native Americans have used blankets to, look, when you bring a new baby home from the hospital, or even if you have your child, you wrap it in a blanket, right? A blanket is something that's comforting. It's something that's meaningful, and that's the way that Native Americans can show that they care about you. And so
I can't think of a more beautiful gift.
Yeah, it's you wrap yourself in the blanket.
There's the blanket.
Yeah, there it is.
That's great. I mean, here I am giving Amazon gift cards, and those don't warm you. If anything, they make you feel more vapid and have a hole in your soul.
Well, it's a Native American-owned business, and so I like to, solicit businesses that I can like that. And yes, the president was very grateful for that. I had it in monogrammed, and it said, Joe Biden, champion for Indian country, 2021
That's awesome.
to 2020.
And you recently ran 34 miles in the desert. What's wrong with you? I mean, as if... Look, although... technically, that could be somebody else because your face is covered. But what's all that about? You don't have enough on your plate? What's...
So, well, I love running.
Yes.
And we went to visit on an official visit to Canyon de Chelly. It's in Arizona. It's a joint management between the National Park Service and the Navajo Nation. And one of our tour guides told us about this race. And as soon as I got in the car, I said, we need to run that. And so it's a lottery.
That gives us a little bit of an insight into your mindset, too.
I applied for the race. I got in, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, I had to, I have a little bit of an entourage when I travel. So some of my security detail and staff had to run with me.
I like that.
So I don't know
But they're going like 4 miles and then they're sharing it.
No,
I just think about our security here. They couldn't even go 500 feet.
No, one of them ran 17 miles up and the other one ran 17 miles back with me.
Years ago, you broke your foot hiking a mountain.
I did.
And then you refused to take a helicopter down, and you walked down on this broken foot. Was that like for environmental reasons or something?
It was actually a broken leg. It broke my leg.
Wow.
I had those hiking poles, so that was helpful. But look,
well, it sounds like it wasn't if you broke your leg.
When you had, no, they weren't helpful at the time. I slipped on a rock. Isn't that strange? It was just a freak accident.
Yeah.
But my choices were to walk down, take a helicopter, like dangle on the outside of the helicopter with the thing, I think, or get 8 staff away from their jobs to carry me down in a chair. And all I thought about was the headlines, right? Secretary Haaland, takes 8 staff away from their jobs to carry her down the mountain in a chair.
Right.
So I decided to walk.
That's tough of you. It shows your grit. You have 40 days left on the job. What is next for Madam Secretary? I mean, you have successfully run a salsa company, bakery. You're in school right now as we speak?
No, I'm not
right?
actually in school.
Okay.
I'm working to finish my master's thesis that I kind of put on hold for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish that.
And what is your master's thesis on?
It's about native food, actually.
Amazing.
Yes, I wanted to show that at Laguna our traditional foods are the same as they were before we migrated. Stew and bread. It might be different forms, right? I may not grow my corn personally, but when I cook it together the way that my ancestors did, we consider it traditional.
That's amazing. I feel the same way about microwave popcorn, but this comes from Ronnie Chang, my friend and fellow news team member, and I love this question. What Native American philosophy can be applied to our current lives and times? And if it's a bad question, it's Ronnie's question.
Okay. So I don't know about Native American quote-unquote philosophy, but I'll tell you some words that I live by.
That's broad. Yes, okay, please.
Some words I live by every single day. My auntie, God rest her soul, Auntie Anne, she was the kindest human being you would ever meet, and her advice to me was be nice to everyone. Be nice to everyone. Be nice to people you don't particularly care about, because that's what you should radiate out to people, right? Be kind to animals, just be kind.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes kindness might be in short supply in our country right now, but if we all followed my aunt's advice, then we might be better off.
I think that's a beautiful answer. It's ironic that Ronnie asked that question because he's a dickhead to everybody. Thank you so much for talking with us. I really appreciate it. Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland.